Welcome back to the Jazz Pursuit. In this video, we're going to look at the classic jazz standard Bye Bye Blackbird, written by Henderson in 1926. Bye Bye Blackbird is one of the most recorded standards in the jazz repertoire, with versions by Miles Davis, Keith Jarrett, John Coltrane, Etta James, and many more. In this video, we'll break down the structure, harmony, and melody to its fundamentals, hopefully making it easier to learn and remember. If you haven't already, do like and subscribe below, and check out our website and Patreon page for PDF handouts that accompany all our videos, plus other extras. Right, let's get started. So, first off, let's look at the key bits of information. Bye Bye Blackbird is usually played in 4/4 time and in the key of F major. The form is 32 bars long, divided into an A, B, C, A1 structure, where each section lasts for 8 bars. We start with the A section, which is followed by the B section. Next is the C section, and then we end with the A1 section, which is a variation on the first A section. Brilliant! So now let's dive in and take a look at the harmony in the A section. The A section starts on chord 1. As Bye Bye Blackbird is in the key of F major, this is F major 7. Next, we have a re-cadence. Rather than cadencing away from chord 1, we instead cadence back to chord 1, hence the name re-cadence. This is a really popular trick to keep the harmony and bass notes moving when the harmony is essentially static. So, we re-cadence using a 2-5-1 progression. As our 1 chord and target point of the re-cadence is F major 7, this means the 2 chord is G minor 7, the 5 chord is C7, and the 1 chord is F major 7. Brilliant! And then we rest on chord 1 for a whole bar, before we have another re-cadence, using the same 2-5-1. Just like the previous bar. So again, our 2 chord is G minor 7, our 5 chord is C7, and our 1 chord is F major 7. Cool! And then at this point, the harmony branches out a little, and we have a progression used widely throughout jazz standards. A 1-6-2-5 progression. And each chord lasts for 1 bar. So chord 1 is F major 7, chord 6 is D minor 7, chord 2 is G minor 7, and chord 5 is C7. We built each of these chords using the notes of the key. However, we can tweak our 6th chord, currently D minor 7, to D7. Making the 6th chord a dominant chord creates more momentum through the progression, as it forms a 5-1 cadence to the next chord, which is chord 2, G minor 7. Great! So that's the harmony in the A section. Now let's hear it on the piano. Super! And now let's take a look at the melody in the A section, which is made up of 3 phrases. It's perhaps easier to think of the melody in relation to our key, F major, rather than the individual chords. The first phrase starts on the 3rd, A, and then rises up to the 4th B flat before falling back to the 3rd A. The second phrase starts the same way, on the 3rd A again, but this time it instead falls to the 2nd G and then to the root F. These first 2 phrases have both lasted 2 bars and been full of notes. The third phrase then counters this, as it lasts for 4 bars and the melody is far more spacious. We start on the root F and then move up to the 2nd G, then we fall back to the root F, ending on the 7th E. Whilst we've talked through the melody in relation to our home key, we can also see how it hangs on the harmony. We start on the 3rd of our F major 7 chord and then move up to the 3rd of our G minor 7 chord. In the second phrase, we outline the same third on our F major 7 chord, before this time falling to the root of our G minor 7 chord. And then in the third phrase, we end by preempting the third of the C7 chord, E. Great! So now let's hear the melody and harmony on the piano. Super! And now let's take a look at the harmony in the B section. The A section harmony is heavily based around chord 1, F major 7, and the B section harmony is based around chord 2, G minor 7, and this is exactly where we start, with a whole bar of chord 2, G minor 7. The B section then continues the recadencing theme that we had in the A section, and we recadence back to chord 2, G minor 7 through a 5-1 cadence. Given our one chord and target point in the cadence is G minor 7, this means D7 is the 5 chord that takes us here. We then have another recadence, but this one is softer than the 5-1 cadences we've had already, and it's instead a 4-1 recadence. Again, given the one chord and target point in the cadence is G minor 7, this means the 4 chord that takes us there is C7. Brilliant! And then we finish the B section harmony by resolving home to chord 1, F major 7. And we do this through a 2-5-1 progression. G minor 7 is the 2 chord, C7 is the 5 chord, and F major 7 is the 1 chord. Cool! So now let's hear the B section harmony on the piano. And now for the B section melody. The melody in the B section is identical to the melody in the A section. However, it reflects the harmony and it's based in G minor rather than in F major. Let me explain, and I'll talk about the melody in G minor terms. Our first phrase starts on the 3rd, B flat, before rising up to the 4th, C, and then falling back down to the 3rd, B flat. The second phrase then starts the same way, again on the 3rd, B flat, but this time it falls to the 2nd, A, and then down to the root, G. Just like before, the first 2 phrases have been busy and lasted 2 bars each, and the third phrase instead lasts for 4 bars and it's more spacious. It starts on the root G and then moves up to the 2nd A before falling back to the root G, ending on the 7th F. Cool! And again, you can see how the melody hangs on the chords. We start on the 3rd of the G minor 7 chord, before rising to the 7th of our D7 chord. In the second phrase, we again start on the 3rd of our G minor 7 chord, before falling to the 5th of the C7 chord. And the third phrase ends by falling to the root of our F major 7 chord. Great! So now let's hear the melody and harmony of the B section on the piano. Nice! And now for the C section harmony, which is the biggest harmonic event in the tune. The first 4 bars of the C section are made up by dominant chords that each last for 1 bar and fall a semitone to the next. We start on chord 1, but rather than being F major 7 like we'd expect, it's instead F dominant 7. We then fall a semitone to our next dominant chord, which is E7. Next, we fall another semitone to our next dominant chord, E flat 7, ending the first 4 bars of the C section by falling a semitone to another dominant chord, D7. Our D7 chord then creates a 5-1 cadence, where D7 acts as the 5 chord, which takes us to G minor 7, which is chord 2 of our key. After all the harmonic activity we've had, we now rest on chord 2 G minor 7 for 2 whole bars. Looking forward, the A1 section starts on chord 1 F major 7. So given we're currently on chord 2 and we're near the end of the C section, a 2-5-1 makes sense to set up the A1 section. G minor 7 is the 2 chord, C7 is the 5 chord, and F major 7 is the 1 chord at the start of the next section. However, the harmonic fun isn't over. Rather than a straight 2-5-1, there's a sting in the tail, and we have a semitone approach to the 5 chord C7 from above. And we go to D flat 7 for a whole bar. Our D flat 7 chord then falls a semitone to C7 for a bar, which is our 5 chord, which then resolves home to chord 1 F major 7 at the start of the A1 section. Great! And now let's hear the C section harmony on the piano. Cool! And now let's take a look at the melody, which consists of 2 4-bar phrases. The first phrase starts on the root F and then jumps up to the 5th C. Next, we walk down through our F major scale until we reach the 2nd G. Interestingly, this is the 3rd of our E flat 7 chord, and then the melody falls a semitone to an F sharp, the 3rd of our D7 chord. This F sharp is the first note in the whole melody that isn't from our home key. The second phrase then starts by outlining our G minor 7 chord, jumping from the 5th D up to the 3rd B flat, before again walking down our F major scale. But this time it's until we reach the root F, which interestingly is the 3rd of our D flat 7 chord, and then the melody falls a semitone again to an E, the 3rd of our C7 chord. Now let's hear the C section harmony and melody on the piano. Brilliant! So this leaves us with just the final A1 section left to learn. Given it's A1, it's very similar to the first A section, but with a slightly different ending. Let's dive in and take a look at the harmony first. So, as we know, we start on chord 1 F major 7, and then we have our first recadence back to F major, using a 2-5-1. G minor 7 is the 2 chord, C7 is the 5 chord, but we never make it back to chord 1 F major 7. In the first A section, we were setting up G minor in the B section, whereas now we need to think about ending the tune, so we're trying to get back to F major. We do this through a 3-6-2-5-1 progression, where each chord lasts a whole bar. Chord 3 is A minor 7, chord 6 is D minor 7, chord 2 is G minor 7, chord 5 is C7, and chord 1 is F major 7. Again, we've built all the chords using the notes of our home key, but we can tweak the 3 chord and the 6 chord and turn them into a minor 2-5, setting up our 2 chord G minor 7. This again helps to create momentum through the progression. So our A minor 7 chord becomes A half diminished, and our D7 chord becomes D7 flat 9. Super! And now let's hear the harmony of the A1 section on the piano. Great! So all that's left now is the A1 melody. Again, it's very similar to the A section melody, and it's made up of 3 phrases. The first phrase is identical. We start on the 3rd A, move up to the 4th B flat, and then fall back to the 3rd A. The second phrase then starts the same way, on the third A, which then falls down to the second, but then rather than falling down to the root F like the first A section, it instead falls to an F sharp, the third of our D7 chord. Our third phrase then starts by rising from the root to the third of our G minor 7 chord, G to B flat, before falling to the third of the C7 chord E, ending on the root of our F major 7 chord F. Super! So here's the A1 section melody and harmony on the piano. Great! So that's the whole tune covered. Before we finish, I just wanted to mention a couple of extra chords that we can add. The first is in the 6th bar of the A section. Rather than the D7 chord we currently have, it's also common to have an A flat diminished chord here. This would also mean that the melody note G would be the major 7, meaning that we can use a diminished major 7 voicing here. Here's how the second half of the A section sounds with this tweak. There's also a little harmonic trick that we can use at the start of the B section. If we view the first 4 chords in G minor terms, we'd start on G minor, and then our D7 chord could instead be G minor major 7, and then we keep our next chord G minor 7, and our C7 chord would be G minor 6. Changing our view of the harmony like this would enable the root notes to fall in semitones. We'd start on a G for the G minor 7 chord, we'd fall to an F sharp for the G minor major 7 chord, fall to an F for the G minor 7 chord, and then to an E for the G minor 6 chord. Here's how the B section sounds with this added tweak. There's another place that we can also add some additional chords in the B section, and it's in the last 2 bars. Currently, we sit on F major 7 for 2 whole bars, and then the C section starts on F7. In here, we can drop a 3-6-2-5 progression, which helps to keep the harmony moving and propels us towards the C section. The 3 chord is A minor 7, the 6 chord is D7, the 2 chord is G minor 7, and the 5 chord is C7. Here's how the B section sounds with these added tweaks. Great, so that's everything. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you haven't already, do like and subscribe below, and check out our website and Patreon page for PDF handouts and other extras. Happy practicing!